You got to make up your mind. Am I like a leftist, feminist, radical, or am I Hamas, Muslim Brotherhood? Like, these things don't go together. Like, you got to pick a side. I'm not going to lie, it's funny to watch.
Yeah.
The ways that, as you said, the right can't even get it together. Even in your hate, even
Right.
in your...
Get your hate right.
Exactly, get your hate right.
Welcome to Friday Night Semites, where we are big fans of all rivers, all seas, and even the occasional estuary.
I believe it's a tributary, right?
A
tributary is actually that which flows from the river to the sea.
All right, well, I'm thinking Oakland, Alameda estuary, but
okay, you're keeping it local for a very small demographic of people.
Exactly. You know, I like to start small and then we'll go big.
From the mountains to the bay. Oakland will be free from gentrification.
Well, we'll see about that. Let's see what happens.
That's a local joke.
Yeah. Sammy, what do you think of when you hear the phrase, from the river to the sea?
Well, of course, obviously.
Palestine
will
be free.
I think of the Bible.
Okay. Oh, I did not think that's what you were going to say.
Oh, you guys didn't know?
No.
You guys didn't know the origins of From the River to the Sea comes from Psalm 72?
No.
72:8. Is that how you refer to Psalms? 72?
I'm Jewish. We just do the first half. So by the time we get to Psalms, I'm usually
I don't know. Actually,
game.
I don't know which. Okay, Psalms is in the New Testament.
It's part 2.
Okay, it shows you how much I know about the Bible.
It's in the sequel.
But if you actually look at the history, okay, so you have that biblical verse, 72:8.
Yeah, chapter and verse.
Chapter verse, right? 72:8. I don't know. What if maybe I like doing my verses first. So
it's okay. Do you? Yeah,
72,
flip it. Okay. Just like Netanyahu.
Yeah, 872. He will have rule from sea to sea and from the river to the ends of the earth. Okay, so that puts some inspiration out there.
Yeah.
United States from sea to shining sea, 18th century.
Yeah.
Right. Manifest Destiny.
There it is.
Okay, and then 1948, the project to form Israel in British Mandatory Palestine.
That was very euphemistic, neutral language there. Keep going.
That's pretty fair, I would say. Pretty fair.
There
okay.
you go.
Anyways, when Israel was established, there was a discussion geographically about what its boundaries would be, and the river and the sea were referenced.
Right.
Okay. So let's start there.
Okay.
Okay. Then you have Palestinians. They endure the Nakba. They're wondering if they're ever going to get their land back. There's this occupation for years. And so liberation movements form, resistance groups form, and at some point in the 1960s, the PLO adopted From the River to the Sea, we want Palestine back. Okay?
Right.
Which, I mean, I don't see anything wrong with that at the time. You're a people who were forcibly removed from your land. You're still alive. It's only been a couple of decades. Why wouldn't you want your land back?
We have land back movement here in the U.S. that's coming up.
Yes.
That's a land back movement there.
Right. So that's 1960s, okay? And then I believe the PLO established it shortly after that, From the River to the Sea, as a call for a complete democratic state for Arabs and Jews. Okay?
Yeah, so that
was late 60s. So 60s and late 60s, it had different, basically it had different context throughout.
Right.
Some meant it said we want Palestine back from river to the sea. Some meant we want a one state solution, democratic state, Arabs and Jews, river to the sea. And then in the 70s, the Likud party of Israel adopted it.
Right.
Saying, and you said they flipped it. They said from the sea to the river.
Yeah, they thought they were cute with it.
Yeah. They switched it up. They're like, from the sea to the river, it will be all Israel.
Right.
Okay. So at this point, you now have literally every interpretation of From the River to the Sea. Yet, if you flash forward nowadays, the reason why it's controversial is because...
Tell me the Jew why it's controversial.
Yes. Yeah.
Please.
Well, I'm telling you what I hear from you.
Yeah, good, because I don't know what I'm saying half the time, so please tell me what I'm saying.
Because I see videos where, people will be like, oh yeah, people don't even know what From the River to the Sea means.
Yeah.
It means kill all the Jews. Like, whoever said that?
Yeah.
And hey, maybe somebody did, okay, but again, people on the Israeli side said, from the river to sea, it'll be all Israel, no Palestinians, get them out. So it's like, okay, fine. There's some, genocidal people using it in both interpretations. So then why are we just taking that specific extreme interpretation and applying it to everybody who's saying it when the overwhelming majority of people are simply calling for the liberation of Palestine? Because if you look at a fucking map, you see that Palestine is occupied from the river to the sea. And in order to actually liberate all of Palestine, regardless of what you do, whether it's one state or two-state solution, the liberation would have to take place from the river to the sea.
Amen.
So you know, it's really, in math we call it topology.
Okay, I don't know what that means.
Yeah, no apologies, it's topology.
All right, so
Yeah.
I'll say for me, the thing that we are told as Jews, as American Jews, is that from the river to the sea, that part's fine. The part that gets scary, not for me, but for others, is the Palestine will be free. Because the question is, what is it? Is it freedom, or is it Palestine will be free of Jews?
Yeah, how much free? Oh, really? People think that?
That is for sure.
Oh my God.
That is for sure what they're saying.
That's crazy.
And so I'll be honest, the first couple times I heard that chant, I'm not talking recently, I'm talking about 5 years ago, 10 years ago, at some of the marches against the occupation, at some of the protests, I wasn't sure what it meant.
Yeah.
Because it's open to interpretation. So I asked people. You go to these rallies, a lot of times you're just standing around, walking in circles with the picket signs.
Yeah.
I like to talk to people.
Sure.
So I asked people what they meant. I said, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. What do you actually mean?
Yes.
Like, what do you, person with this nice picket sign, mean?
Yeah.
And I talked to 30 or 40 people. And
A sample size, I like that.
it's a good sample size.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's, mathematically sound, but
It's
I
okay.
did what I could.
It's okay to do a little bit of work.
And so, and everybody, except for one, we'll talk about the one, everybody said what you said, which is what I believe, which is a democratic, secular land for all peoples who live there, equal rights from the Jordan to the Mediterranean and back.
Right.
There was one gentleman who did say to my scraggly Jewish face, I said, what do you think from the river to the sea means?
Yeah.
And he said, get rid of the Jews. They need to leave.
Wow.
And that shook me.
What was the demographics of this guy?
I did not ask him what his background was, but I will say this. I know that I remember he was a big dude.
Okay.
And he had a gold cross.
Okay.
So he was not Muslim.
All right.
I know that.
Well, there you go.
So
See?
the
there you
whatever
go.
you want to say it.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that Christian anti-Semitism is a problem. I'm just saying that the one
It's
person
the only
I heard it from-
anti-Semitism. But it's the only real anti-Semitism.
So to me, my takeaway from that is, from the river to the sea is a call for freedom. It's a call for justice. It's a call for equality. Do some people use it in less favorable ways? Is there anti-Semitism, anti-Jewish feelings in the movement? Some small amount, yes. But there is inequality and justice. I'm not expecting ancient hatreds to go away. And just because one person or two person feel that way, I'm not going to let that stop me from joining the movement for equal rights, peace, and justice for everybody.
Sure. When some people say "Make America Great Again," don't you think that some people are thinking, "Let's get the immigrants out"?
I think maybe some people are thinking that.
Do you think? You think only like a few people think that? Do you think more people think that than people think that from the river to the sea means no Jews at all in the Holy Land?
I think "Make America Great Again" is a more problematic slogan than "From the river to the sea," without a doubt.
Well,
I think the connotations of it. And
well, it's not getting banned anytime soon because we all want America to be great, right? And anybody in their right mind wants Palestine to be free from the river to the sea. But
we got a great guest tonight. She can break this down on a whole nother level.
She's coming all the way from the river over here to
the Hudson River.
From the Hudson River all the way over here to the Sea of the Pacific, Bay Area Sea.
Hello, my friend.
We got Linda Sarsour in the
Good to
building.
see you.
Hey,
Good to
welcome,
see you.
welcome,
Good
welcome
to
to
see
the
you.
garage.
Happy to be here.
Since it's Friday night, we always like to welcome our guests with a little food. So I don't know, what do we have tonight? Oh, we got, since you're coming from New York, we got some Jewish deli food for you. So we got some arugula, of course, some pickles.
Gotta have the pickles.
And we got what we got.
My father sold these at his deli in Crown Heights.
Oh, yeah?
Brooklyn. That's right.
I could see these doing pretty good in
Oh,
Crown Heights.
they were doing really
Yeah.
well, my friend. Chocolate flavor, some fruit ones.
So
You know what I will
welcome.
say Arabs and Jews really share is not really for the gluten-free. I'll tell you that much.
I had to go gluten-free for a while because I had some long COVID stuff. But
That's
man,
like sacrilegious for us.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I had to let go of bagels. I had to let go
Oh, no,
of
my
challah.
friend.
I had to
Oh,
let
no.
go of. Anyway, fuck that.
He's
back
back.
to the gluten.
He's
back
back.
to the gluten.
So yeah, you do activism. Would you call yourself an activist?
Something like that. That's what they call me, Sammy. So I'm going to go with it today.
How long you been in the activism game?
More than half of my life, over 22 years. You know, growing up as a kid in Brooklyn, I never actually dreamed of being an activist. That's not like a thing. You don't like, oh, when I grow up, I want to be a poorly paid activist that everybody hates. But I got into this after the horrific attacks of 9/11. As you know, I was born and raised in a very large Arab American Muslim community in Brooklyn. The horrific attacks of 9/11 happened. You know how it is, shook not only New York City, but the whole country. Everybody was like, oh my God. And the United States government decided that the enemy was within. They went away from these 19 hijackers who claimed the Muslim faith, none of whom were American citizens, none of whom were from Brooklyn, and basically targeted the community that I was from. Every level of law enforcement. They raided our businesses, our coffee shops, and they literally kidnapped fathers and sons. And people will say, oh, you're hyperbole, you're drama. No, no. When you come to someone's home and you take their loved one and don't tell them where you're taking them, that is called kidnapping.
Yeah.
It's state-sanctioned kidnapping. And so my introduction to kind of organizing and activism was a translator. I speak fluent Arabic. And a lot of these women whose husbands and sons were taken, English is not their first language. They don't know how to navigate.
Yeah. Right.
And these are mostly people who fled other countries because of this kind of thing.
Right.
And now they come to, you know, Brooklyn and everyone's like, here's the place where you could be who you are.
Right.
This is the land of the free.
Right.
And now they're literally looking for their loved ones in the abyss of law enforcement in America. And so I became a translator, you know, and I ended up as a young person, I was a college student at the time, literally in like the Northeast in New Jersey, in Pennsylvania, in downtown Manhattan, in detention centers. Basically trying to help people locate their family members and being an interpreter between our government and these mothers, and sometimes between the women and their lawyers when we would able to find them some pro bono services. So that's how I got in, and I was like taken aback as a child of immigrants who lived a pretty good childhood. My parents really gave me a great childhood, and I was like, yeah, this is not okay. And who's gonna fight for my people if we're not gonna fight, or I'm not gonna fight? And
Right.
the rest is history, my friend. I've been here for 22, almost 23 years now.
You still translating?
Still translating. I'm grateful. I was resentful of my parents who, by the way, I was not allowed to speak English at home.
Oh,
The
wow.
minute I walked in from school, because I went to public school, my parents were like, English is for outside with your friends and school. In this house, we speak Arabic. I was a little resentful, so me and my sisters would speak to each other in English. But now that as I grew older, I was like, well, look at that. Thanks
Yeah.
to my mom and dad for forcing me to speak Arabic so I could be fluent in my own parents' original language.
Well, you know, we're in this moment now, and you see huge protests, huge marches, huge student movements. You haven't seen marches and movements like this in years.
That's right.
And at the same time, there's always the pushback. And so, and not just the pushback from the right, but the pushback from some of the folks who are supposedly the left. And so you hear that phrase progressive, except for Palestine. PEP.
Yes, sir.
PEP.
That's a real.
Yeah,
That's
it's got an acronym.
That's a real thing.
Yeah, it's an acronym, it's real, and obviously we have a little of that in the Jewish community, and I'm working on it.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're working on it. Just a little small disconnect,
teeny.
small contradiction, but like, how do you deal with that phrase? How do you deal with that concept, progressive except for Palestine?
Oh yeah, I'm the queen of backlash over here, my friend.
Okay, great.
Somebody
Yeah.
give me an award for that one.
All right.
PEP is a thing, progressive except for Palestine. Mark Lamont Hill and one of his colleagues wrote a whole book about it. It's
Okay.
an actual thing.
Yeah.
It's people who will say everything that you want them to say, and their values are generally aligned. So they'll say things like, women's right to choose, immigrants and refugees need to be, treated with dignity and respect. People who are, for climate justice, right, and fighting for, climate justice. People who will fight for queer rights, right? And then somehow the buck stops with the Palestinians. It's like they have their values all aligned, and all of a sudden a disruption happens in their mind or something.
Yeah.
And then they cannot extend that to Palestinians. Like, if you care about climate and climate justice, well, let's talk about what's happening in Gaza even before the genocide started, right? The access to clean water for the residents of Gaza. If you care about women's reproductive rights, the lack of access of healthcare and access to healthcare for pregnant women and other women and girls in Gaza. So the idea that you can extend the issues that you care about to the Palestinian people is something that's always confused me.
Yeah.
Because you would think that it would be easy for people. Like, I would extend that to Sudan, to the Congo. I would extend that to Brazil. I would extend that to Mexico. Why is it that it stops right here at the Palestinian? We've had folks that will go to the U.S.-Mexico border and say, this is outrageous.
Right. That wall is no good.
That wall is no good.
That wall over there.
But the apartheid wall, that, my friends, is okay because it's for security reasons. So that, again, there's just this real contradiction that's not from us, from folks who are on the pro-Palestinian side. I have no contradictions.
Yeah.
But I really want to challenge, and that's what I do in the movement. I challenge people.
Yeah.
I said, how could we, for example, stand together and say we are against white supremacy in the United States of America? We do not want to live in a white Christian nationalist state. I wouldn't want to live in a Muslim national state in the U.S.
Right.
But then those people will agree. But then they'll support a state that is called the Jewish state.
Yeah.
And that treats people who are not Jewish as second and third class citizens. And I'm like, how do you reconcile that? And that's the question that is not for us. It's for people who are sharing those views.
I think a big part of it is because they don't want to come off as anti-Semitic. And I say this, part of what I've realized is that, Jews were known to have stereotypically, like we have a lot of guilt. The Jew, we talk, it comes from our mothers, it comes from this, whatever. But I feel like Christians, we don't talk enough about Christian guilt and European guilt. And I think that after the Holocaust, that there's so much guilt for what happened to the Jews in Europe that America didn't let in Jews who were fleeing the Holocaust. Mm-hmm. I think that there's still generations who are afraid to be seen as anti-Semitic, and they don't know that you can do both. You can being for Palestinians is not anti-Jewish.
That's right.
It's almost like we should sit on the couch and have a show and talk together, you know what I mean? But like...
That's anti-Semitic.
Well, it depends on the title of the show. But I think that they can't hold the both and.
That's right.
It's both very complicated and not complicated at all.
That's right.
And if we can hold that, we can learn, but motherfuckers are lazy. Thank you.
Are you ready for president? What was that?
Definitely not.
Wow.
Definitely not.
Yeah, I'm definitely not going to win.
I think what it is that, and I think that I wish Jewish people, particularly those who are kind of in that place that you're talking about, hear us. We understand there's historical trauma. We're talking thousands of years and people that have carried it on from generation to generation. And we understand that. Palestinians, we recognize that there was a horrific moment that happened where 6 million Jews were slaughtered. We know that. The thing that hurts my heart is that we're only going to be safe with each other.
Yeah.
And this idea that in order for Jews to be safe, they have to siphon themselves off of everybody else. And that's dangerous.
Yep.
And that's where the real anti-Semites, that's what they want. They want our Jewish neighbors to continue to feel vulnerable and feel isolated and feel marginalized. Mm-hmm. And my thing is that at some point you got to heal.
Yeah.
We got to get into the healing space.
Yeah.
And I think that's the place where I know that there's a lot of conversations happening about that, but there's real anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
That's a real thing.
Yeah.
And if we're going to say that if we're going to take real anti-Semitism that actually harms people, right, that is actually looking at the destruction of a community, Jewish community, And we want to ignore that real anti-Semitism and the threat of real anti-Semitism by saying Linda Sarsour or these pro-Palestinian activists or these students on the college campus or Sammy or Josh are the real anti-Semites. We are in big trouble. And the people who are going to be in the most trouble and the most vulnerable are our Jewish communities. Because you can vehemently disagree with us. I'm not asking anybody to agree with us on anything. Don't agree with the students on the campuses either. That there's a difference between vehement disagreement on an issue and actual threat to your safety, your physical safety. And I think if people don't make that distinction, like we're never going to harm people, right? We're just going to debate and disagree. And there got to be a difference. People got to make that distinction.
You're allowed to be uncomfortable. It's okay to be uncomfortable.
We're uncomfortable every day.
I'm uncomfortable right now.
Yeah, that's clear. But being uncomfortable is different from being unsafe.
That's right.
And we need to acknowledge the difference. I always wanted to know, how did they call you an anti-Semite when you were out here literally for 4 years rocking with Bernie Sanders? So like, how do you respond to that?
I mean, my track record is clear. And I keep telling people all the time, I'm not going to let anybody define who I am. And so I just let it roll off my back. And that's why I'm still here, still organizing. A lot of people, when they get labeled anti-Semite, it immediately makes them retreat. They kind of are silent. They're scared. They're worried about all these potential consequences. And I always tell people...
Not Kanye, but everybody else.
Well, not Kanye. Lord have mercy.
There's exceptions to the rule.
There's always exceptions to the rule.
Exceptions to the rule.
But I just kind of keep moving. You gotta keep moving. You gotta keep going. I believe in what I'm doing is right. I believe I have very deep convictions. I don't believe that fighting for the rights of Palestinian and the right for Palestinians to have freedom and liberation means that I'm fighting against the freedom and liberation of any other people. That has never been a call of the Palestinian Solidarity Movement. And as you know, and Sammy knows, our movements are full of anti-Zionist Jews, and they're not just this new radical generation that just came up. There are women that I organize with in New York City who are like in their 70s and 80s.
The bubbies.
They've been outside for Palestine.
Bubbies, what does that mean?
Bubbies is grandmas.
Like Sifty. Bubbies like a way of saying Sifty.
Okay.
And so we've always had Jews that have been part of the movement for Palestinian freedom, Jews that have supported an end to occupation and end to siege of the people of Gaza. So for me, I just let it go. And I don't waste my time debating people on the internet. I don't go back and forth. I don't stoop to the level. I'm clear-eyed. I know what I'm doing. I know who my allies are. I know what I'm fighting for. And that's what I tell people all the time. Just don't waste your time. And I think that what I say to people who are labeling Black, brown, Jews who are in solidarity with the Palestinian people, who do that to the Muslims, to Palestinians, and start using this kind of anti-Semite label, I say to people that it's not even about us and the people being called anti-Semitic. It's about the people who are calling us anti-Semitic, who are going to take that word and they're going to lose the actual meaning of it.
For sure.
And that's what I'm scared about.
For sure.
That we're going to stop actually knowing what the real threat is, and we're going to start thinking we're the threat, and then we're going to lose potentially people in our communities because we lost sight of the real threat.
My hot take is I think we should stop using that word anyways. I can't speak for Jewish people, but the word anti-Semitic is racist. We already talked about this in the previous episode. It's a Nazi popularized term. It was originally intended to mean hatred towards all Semitic peoples, which includes Arabs, people from Ethiopia, people who speak Aramaic. And it got popularized by the Nazis. And we're, for some reason, using that word to describe hatred towards Jewish people. Hatred towards Jewish people is very real, and it's something that we should be conscious of. But like using the word anti-Semitic,
Sammy?
And I'll tell you, as a person who knows Jewish people, is very real. So I see that term. Like people are starting to say, oh, the word's losing meaning, and it's like it's sad. It's really sad, and at the same time, it's like, to me, in terms of semantics, it's lost meaning already because it doesn't actually mean what it's supposed to mean. It's too broad.
Yeah.
So
it's similar to like Islamophobia. People debate that because Islamophobia is like the irrational fear. It means the irrational fear of Muslims. It should be anti-Jewish bigotry or anti-Jewish hate, anti-Muslim bigotry, anti-Muslim hate, but
it doesn't have the same ring to it.
That's right, and that's what it is.
Yeah, you got to have a catchphrase.
So Islamophobia.
Hate crimes got to be catchy in this day and age.
It's crazy because if you hate Muslim people, you're called Islamophobic. If you hate Jewish people, you're called anti-Semitic. And if you hate Christians, you're just the Grinch. Like, what are you? They don't even come up with a word for that. You know what I mean?
That's a good point.
No. The thing that I can't understand is I was reading one of the articles, the Fox News, defenders of all of us, when they were going after anti-Semitism or trying to be defenders of the Jews and these great they say they're free speech warriors until you get to this,
Of
right?
course.
That's one.
It stops there.
But then two, there was an article where Fox News was saying they were going after the student protests. I think they even shouted you out, not in the best way. But then they were saying all of this was funded by George Soros, which
The
is
Jewish
the
guy.
anti-Semitic conspiracy theory.
Wow.
So they're using the anti-Jewish and Islamophobic conspiracy theory together.
Can you believe that?
And it doesn't even mash up, but they don't give a fuck
They don't
because
care.
that's parsing too many lines at
Exactly.
once. And they know that it's just fear. They just want fear, fear, fear is the diet. And then we'll give people that, and then you'll make them want
also-
to do whatever.
It's fear, but it's also divide and conquer,
For
right?
sure.
So who benefits when Muslims and Jews aren't together, right? Who benefits when Palestinians and Jews aren't together, right? There's somebody.
Christian
there are people-
Zionists.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. And then the other thing, I've been, people know this, and it's something that I think people are starting to learn as you're leaning into this whole thing that's happening in Palestine, this genocide, is that most Zionists in America are Christians.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's something people like, the majority of Zionists in America are Christians.
For sure.
And then that blows people's minds.
There's, I believe the stat is pretty easy to prove. There's more Christian Zionists than there are Jewish people in the world.
It's not that many of us.
Right.
Yeah. There's
right. And that's why it's always interesting.
Brooklyn.
Like sometimes people accuse us of using Zionist as equivalent with Jewish, and it's
Right.
like math. No, it's like mathematically not
Impossible,
at all.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting how you have progressive except for Palestine, and then on the conservative side you have free speech except for Palestine. The FEPs.
The FEPs.
Oh, look at that. We got a new...
Peps and the FEPs.
The peps.
We all just came
and
up with a
the
new
feps.
term. The
Yep.
FEPs and the PEPs.
The FEPs and the
The
peps.
preppy peps feps. There we go. So
So you've been labeled a lot of things, right? Like I did in some like publications said you were like Hamas funded or you were funding Hamas or something like that.
All kinds of things, my friends.
Yeah.
Everything. The Muslim...
you gotta pick George
had a-
Soros or Hamas.
Come on, you
pick,
gotta-
pick a side.
Yeah, come
bro.
on.
Like the sisterhood of the Muslim Brotherhood. I mean, these people get creative, my friends. Like,
That's actually
it
a good
is-
phrase, but
Yeah,
keep
they just.
going.
I mean, it's like at some point they called me like a theocrat, and then I'm like, you got to make up your mind. Am I like a leftist, feminist, like, radical, or am I Hamas, Muslim Brotherhood? Like these things don't go together. So
Right.
you gotta make up your mind. I can't be some like religious fundamentalist, but then I'm also like a radical leftist anarchist. Like you gotta pick a side, my friends. And that's why it's I'm not gonna lie, it's funny to watch.
Yeah.
The ways that, as you said, the right can't even get it together, right? Like even in your hate, even
Right.
in your
Get
even
your
in
hate right.
In your exactly, get your hate right, right?
Step
Even in
on
your
that.
defamation, get
Yeah.
your hate right, my
Yeah.
friends.
You go around the country. You're based in New York, but you go around the country. You're speaking at events. You've been to a lot of the college campuses. You've been in this movement for so many years, but over the last 6, 7, 8 months, this is obviously the devastation has brought people to the streets. What have you seen that has been powerful? What has been surprising? Have you been surprised?
When I started organizing almost 23 years ago, I literally dreamed about this generation that is here now, because I organized in a community where there was a lot of fear of people who didn't want to say certain things. They're worried about opportunities. People just like, look, we know the world's bad, but we just trying to live and survive. And it was hard for me to find, and there were some, of course, but there wasn't a lot of people that were willing to take risks, especially not on an issue like Palestine. And I said, you know what? There's going to come a generation that is going to be bold and unapologetic. They're going to be anti-capitalist. They're not going to worry about no Harvard degree. They don't care about no job. They are going to be a principled generation. And it's interesting because before that kind of came to the surface, people were claiming this generation's lazy, they're narcissistic, they're the social media generation, they're the Instagram kids. And all of a sudden they came out swinging.
Yeah.
Here are some kids going to Harvard and Columbia and Yale and the UCs, and they are outside.
Yep.
And they're like, take my degree. Like, oh, I'm not going to graduate, but I will not be silent during a genocide.
Yeah.
What I will be remembered as the kid that lost my college degree from Harvard.
Yeah.
But I was a vocal opponent of a genocide that was being funded by my taxpayer dollars. And so for me, I've been inspired. I'm not gonna lie to you, I was in manic depression up until those student encampments. Like I would cry 10 times a day. I would not want to wake up in the morning. I'm like, I don't even want to live in this world. It's a world that watches kids getting slaughtered. I don't care what side of the issue you're on. I don't care who you are. If you are a human being watching little babies being pulled up from under the rubble and you can't say this is horrific, that this should stop, I didn't want to live in a world. And then all of a sudden you start seeing these college kids, young kids, 19-year-olds who are like, not waiting for the adults. You all failed us. We waited for you for a couple of months and you failed. And now we're going outside.
We're
going
taking
outside.
it over.
And they're taking it over. And I've been to encampments all across this country. I was at UC San Diego. I went to the Yale campus. I went to Princeton. I was at Columbia. I saw the CCNY. These kids they got a little library, come learn. They got teaching.
They're organized.
They have gluten-free section, nut-free, so making sure.
So they all got the root. Well, they got the gluten-free.
They got they got those, and then they got a separate section all the way over there. Menaish, knafe.
Oh man!
I mean, they have their food.
Come for the protest, stay for the potluck. You gotta eat well, keep the movement going.
Listen, I was at a Princeton, and there was a woman there named Amani from New Jersey. She's a Palestinian mom, and she came with 5 maklubas, which is probably one of the most famous Palestinian dishes, which basically just means upside down. So Yep.
Oh.
And she came, and then these kids were there, and then it was an opportunity to learn and share food and break bread, because Palestinians, this is what hospitality and food is what we know.
Yeah.
And you saw these young black kids, and we had this one white woman professor. I mean, they were flipping maklubas better than I was.
Oh man!
But it was just to watch that moment of like solidarity, community. That's what these kids are building. When I went to the Columbia, I only went because those kids don't need me.
Yeah,
they're doing it.
Yeah,
the only reason I went is because I was watching the television and watching Instagram. I said, let me see what's going on, because they're making it sound like it's a war zone out there. I went to Columbia and I literally watched a Friday prayer happen. Not only the Friday prayer, because that's just normal, because the Muslims pray on Fridays.
Yeah.
I saw kids.
I've
heard. Good thing that just want to make sure everybody's
I appreciate that. Yeah.
I saw kids running to the corner of the encampment. I said, where are these kids going? They went to the corner. There was a pile of blankets. They went and got the blankets while the Muslim kids were setting up to pray. And the kids stood around them holding up these blankets, almost like a curtain, to kind of give them that privacy to pray.
It's beautiful.
And then after that's Friday, as you know, on that day.
Yeah.
Friday night Semites.
Yeah.
Then it's time for the Sabbath, right?
Yeah.
So then the Muslim kids did finish the prayer, Shabbat, a couple 2 hours later.
Yeah.
And here comes the Jewish kids. They're the center of the circle. And all these kids, Muslim, Palestinian, Arab, white, all kinds of kids sitting around them, allowing them to then do their own rituals and tradition. I said to myself, I was watching, I said, this is the world that I want to live in.
Exactly.
They're literally building the actual world that we want to live in.
Yeah.
And all it takes is, their parents' money.
I mean, listen.
A little FAFSA.
Also a little scholarship, little FAFSA.
I love them.
Yeah,
I call them foot soldiers. These students. They're
wonderful.
I feel like we are indebted to them, and they're in debt as well. And
that part.
And
they don't give a fuck.
Yeah, no, they're doing great work. I feel the exact same way. As soon as the students started doing the thing, I was like, this. I never saw this coming, but this is what is supposed to be happening right now.
Let me ask a question, because why did it feel like different? Because there have been protests, and I felt it too, but I'm just curious. Like, in the Bay, there's like a protest in every other day, once a week. There's a lot of protests, but the student protests, it did feel different. It does feel different. Why?
It feels different because it's young people.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, I'm 44 years old. Those are my children's age, right? So you're seeing your kind of legacy, your next generation, right? But also, they're not just doing a protest. That's the thing. It's not just, you don't just go there and all it is like free Palestine. These are people that are building a community, a safe community. They're actually a reflection of what everybody should want.
Right.
A space, like when I went to Columbia, the first day, I literally had to stop. There were students apparently at a checkpoint. It was so funny. It's like a little checkpoint thing they had. And I had to abide by 3 principles in order to even enter the encampment.
Okay.
Was I willing to respect the dignity of every single human being? Absolutely. I was not allowed to bring any drugs, any weed, any alcohol, any substances into the encampment.
All right, so I might have to...
Yeah, you're not.
Chill, bro.
I'll come later.
Yeah, you got to come later or just not come with it.
Yeah.
And the third one was around keeping the area clean and safe for people. So the idea was would you be willing to come and take responsibility for yourself? Anything you eat, anything. And I was looking at myself I want to live in a world where everyone respects the dignity of all people, that we don't bring, substances that could potentially, with the large use of, harm the people or create, less safety. Obviously, weapons was all the things. We're not allowed to bring any weapons in there, no knives, no anything. And also to take care of the earth and clean and keep the space clean. I said, these are very basic 3 principles that were, like, I want to abide by that everywhere.
It's the only checkpoint I've heard of that I actually like.
There you go. Exactly what I said. Yeah. That's what I said.
Yeah. So,
and
but you don't ever hear those principles discussed in the media.
Of course not.
You don't ever hear those principles of like what this is actually about. You don't hear what companies they're trying to divest from, and you don't hear that these universities are basically just mega private equity firms that do a little education on the side. Like,
literally, I mean, Columbia itself has something like $40 billion. Like, we're not talking about a couple of $1 million here or there. We're talking about like Columbia is the biggest real estate mogul in New York City. Like,
in the city?
Yeah, the biggest real estate mogul. Like they are, they're one of the biggest gentrifiers in Harlem. And this has been a long-standing issue before even the Palestine thing came up. The question people should be asking are, why universities invest in the weapons industry, like weapons manufacturers. Like, this is what the kids are saying. Like, I don't want to go to a university that profits off of war and weapons. Like, what are you doing? And so, again, to your point, I mean, Malcolm X and Dr. King said this in, similar ways. They had the same point. But basically, this idea that the media is the most powerful entity in the world. And it will have you loving the oppressors and hating the oppressed. And the media has not shifted from that. And that was said back in the 1960s. And here we are still watching something on the media that is not actually what's happening when you actually show up to the. That's why I told people, show up. Go for yourself. Go open your eyes and go in there and tell me that you actually believe that there are threats coming from these 19, 20-year-old kids who are literally saying end genocide. Like, we are punishing children for saying they're against genocide. Like, the thing is, like, they're like, stop killing children.
But
and we're punishing them for that.
It's symbolic, because these kids are the future. You had for months, we had these protests in the street, and they're like, all right, shut up, old people. You don't know what you're talking about. And then the kids are like, no, we are the future, and we're not going to let time move forward with this going on. So it's very symbolic. And it's interesting that still the media will still like portray them as, either anti-Semitic or, disruptive or doing illegal things. I mean, first of all, like, with the illegal things, like breaking stuff, breaking into the hall, changing the name and all that stuff, breaking the barriers and stuff. Dude, illegal protests are what this country was founded on. Like, you think the Boston Tea Party was legal? Like, that was someone else's tea, bro. Like, the nation was founded on illegal protests. So to have this narrative that like illegal protests are somehow inherently wrong defies the whole foundation of this country. And it's also symbolic because you look at the 1968, the Vietnam War. 75% of America was against the student protest. It just shows you how dumb older people are. And it's like, do when you look at the stats and you look back and the Vietnam War was wrong, it was a dumb idea, and you realize that, do not look at that and look at yourself now and be like, maybe I am wrong. You either side with the kids or you die wrong.
Or South African apartheid. I mean, the kids, generally speaking, American students have really historically never been wrong, and they've always, generally speaking, been on the right side of history. But even back to your point about, Sammy, about the breaking of the door or the window, right? The people who clutched their pearls remind me of the same ones that were clutching their pearls back in 2020 when the George Floyd protests were, and I was in Minneapolis. They were clutching their pearls about broken windows of a liquor store or whatever. And my thing is like, look, I'm with you if you want to talk about don't, break property. But the problem is, the reason why I'm not is because you will clutch your pearls because of a broken window at a CVS, but you haven't clutched your pearls or showed any empathy or any solidarity around the actual dead body that was on the floor named George Floyd or Breonna Taylor. So the fact that you want to clutch your pearls about some kids breaking and cracking a window at Columbia University, but you have not said even one thing in solidarity with over 40,000 Palestinian dead bodies, 15,000 of them children. You think I'm going to take you seriously because you worry more more about a table
right.
or a chair than you do about actual human life. That's why we can't take you seriously.
Or the complete destruction of all universities.
Every university. That's what the kids are saying.
Not just the windows, like the whole thing.
Not a single university left in Gaza. That's what the students are saying. I saw some students that were literally walked across the stages at their graduations, and I saw one girl rip her degree up, and then later on they were like, "Yo, hold on, whoa." And she said, the students of Gaza are either dead, or they're not going to be able to graduate like they deserve to. And she's like, this means nothing to me if there's a genocide happening right now with not a single university left in Gaza. That's what people don't understand. That's why the students are riled up, because they're at Columbia, they're at Yale, they're at Princeton and Stanford, and they know that in Gaza there's not a single university that is left. And feeling that kind of guilt that you're talking about, that you could walk across a stage, you're now thinking about your future opportunities, what job you're going to get, what job you're not going to take. But guess what? Not a single person in Gaza can have the same conversation with themselves.
And if your degree is in philosophy, rip it up anyways.
I minored in philosophy, so
there you
obviously
go, man. Rip up that minor.
that was obviously the perfect precursor to hosting a podcast. That was just what I needed. So let's talk about elections. Yeah.
You trying to go there?
Yeah, I'm trying to go there. We've been doing really safe topics like anti-Semitism and student protests, but now we're going scary. Electoral binary politics. So I've been following in the primaries. Your organization helped lead the campaign around the undecided or uncommitted voting in the primaries, protesting, trying to pressure Biden in the Democratic primaries. And I remember when the first one happened in Michigan, it was like y'all were hoping for 10,000 votes uncommitted, and it ended up being 100,000 uncommitted. And it's definitely sent a message. And so I want to know kind of what was your message? What was your goal? Do you feel like y'all achieved the goal for the primary campaign?
I would say, first I want to give a shout out to all the organizers, Josh, across the country. I mean, this was like hella grassroots, like no money type stuff, like just, outside ragtag. And our friends in Michigan really led the way. It basically was like, look, we have an option. And the option on the ballot in Michigan said undecided, uncommitted, I mean. And uncommitted actually sounded really good. It's like, I'm uncommitted. Like, I'm not going to the polls. And the thing about our people is that they're so outraged that this was an opportunity to keep them engaged. Because they were like, we're not going to the polls. Because we don't want to be part of this process while we're watching this genocide unfold in Gaza. And we said, wait a minute, you have an uncommitted choice on your ballot. Send a message to Joe Biden that you are uncommitted during this presidential primary. That is your right. That is your opportunity to participate. And, the reason why we had a number about 11,000. Why? Because we looked at numbers in the past, and Donald Trump had won the state of Michigan by about 11,000 votes. And that's what we were kind of trying to beat in the moment. And, the people of Michigan stood up in this was an uncontested primary. Like, Joe Biden had no competition, really. And the people of Michigan got up. Over 104,000 people went to the polls. On the Democratic primary, remember, there's a Republican primary also that has an uncommitted. Put that to the side. This is only 104,000 Democrats who went to the polls and basically voted against Joe Biden. And it did start sending a message. And the message was that count this out for genocide. And you better start seeing our power, not just in the street, but also in the ballot box, which is what they care about. They care about votes and money. And so what happens is they start all of a sudden like, Michigan, there really is it's very unlikely to find a pathway to the White House without Michigan. It's very unlikely. And so what ends up happening is that they start, all of a sudden, ceasefire comes up. They start using the word, even though they want to say temporary ceasefire. But in the past, they were saying humanitarian pause. So now they're taking on the language. Then Kamala goes to Selma for the commemoration of Bloody Sunday, literally just a few days later, and she's also saying ceasefire, right? Then they start talking about, we're going to drop aid on Gaza. All of a sudden it's February. Now you know that we don't want you to drop aid on Gaza because there's other ways that you have power to get the aid in by telling your friends in Israel, open the borders. But let's just say, okay, all of a sudden they're dropping aid.
Maybe stop bombing for a little bit. And
that part. So they started all of a sudden saying dropping aid. That was after the Michigan primary. And then they were, remember the whole, I'm going to build something, I don't know what it is, a port or something. Instead of telling Israel to open the borders, they would be willing to do extra work to build the port, which of course people have other theories about why there's a port there, but
Yep,
we don't have
yep,
to get
yep,
into that.
yeah.
I'm just saying that what we've seen is a change in rhetoric, but not in
Yeah.
a change in action, is what
Yeah.
I'm saying. And I think that I always tell people all the time that we're not claiming those things are wins, but we're letting people know, like, when you do these kind of creative political kind of organizing, you start seeing a shift.
Yeah.
And it's, the ball is not in our court.
Right.
The ball is in Joe Biden's court. It's not in my court. And
Right.
it's not in the court of the voters right now.
Right. So then after the primaries, we got the general. And it's the question people are asking me. We're all asking each
Yeah.
other. No one likes the question. We don't even usually like the answer, but I know
Is
you
Jill
get it every
Stein
day.
fit to be president? I mean, I know a lot of people are asking that, but it's not.
So what do we do in November?
What I've been telling people is that we often wake up every 4 years to basically talk about who's going to be the president of the United States of America. And I keep telling people all politics is local. And if you're not excited about the top of the ticket, you got to start focusing on your local elections. Most of the issues that actually impact your daily life every single day are happening in your city council and your state legislators. And also, regardless of who becomes the president, right? Because listen, we're in big trouble, my friends.
Yeah.
I just want to make it clear that we're all clear that
Yeah.
Donald Trump is a fascist, and that, my friends, is not something that anybody wants for this country, and I don't want it, and I don't want it for myself. And that's why I'm so outraged at Joe Biden, that he is in a place where he's literally sacrificing our democracy so that he can unequivocally stand with the state of Israel during a genocide. It's like, what are you doing, my friend? What are the Democratic Party doing? So I'm just saying that I want people to make sure that people know this is not for me, it's not a, Trump, Joe Biden situation for me,
Yeah.
because Trump is off the table for me
Yeah.
personally. But let's just say Donald Trump goes to the White House.
Can we not say it and pretend we did? Or
Yeah, well,
okay, all right.
if it
Yeah.
happens, and I'm just saying that we got to be,
Yeah.
we got to
No,
be,
for sure.
make sure it's on the table.
For sure.
We still we should have a Democratic majority Senate and a Democratic majority House. At the very least, be able to block nominations, be able to block some of the horror that we know is going to come from a Donald Trump administration. And so I'm just telling people, like, I'm not going to tell you who to vote for, but I'm going to tell you that all politics is local, and you got to go down the ballot, and you got to wake up and vote every year. Don't
Yeah.
just wake up every 4 years and tell me who the president of the United States. And that's the problem we have in this country. Somehow the marketing only comes around, the marketing campaigns come around every 4 years, and all the horror happens in between the 4 years. And that's the
Right.
thing that I keep telling people that are always debating me about, Donald Trump is, horrible. I don't need you to tell me that. I'm
Right.
a Muslim, my friend. I was a target of the administration for 4 years.
Yeah.
The son of the president called me out by name, and I was,
Really?
yeah,
Which one?
Donald
Which
Trump
one?
Jr.
Oh, Donnie? Lil
yeah,
Donnie?
little Donnie called me out by name. I mean, I
man.
was a target of this administration. I was outside for 4 years on the front lines fighting under a Trump administration. I was one of the co-chairs of the Women's March on Washington. I was targeted by NRA. I mean, I had everybody.
Yeah,
I had the
yeah.
NRA. I had the right-wing Zionists. I had everybody.
Yeah.
White supremacists. People would show up to places
You're
in
a
Arizona.
unifier.
You're a unifier.
Yeah,
I'm
you
a
bring
unifier
people
of the
together.
right. And listen, I was in Arizona one time. They came with guns that were taller than me standing outside an event that I did. So
Shit.
I just want to tell people all the time, that whole trying to explain to Muslims that Donald Trump is bad, we don't need the explanation.
got
We
it.
know very clear.
Yeah, you got
it's
it.
very clear to me. But I also want to say that the ball is in Joe Biden's court. The voters have spoken. 80% of Democrats have united around this idea of ceasefire.
Yeah.
66% of Americans in general, regardless of political party, support a ceasefire. It's like, who is your base, my friend? Who are you talking to, my friend? Because the majority of Americans want a ceasefire now.
The phrase that I've heard is that I like from some of my organizer friends is they say,
Blue, no matter how old.
They might as well say that, my friend.
is that and both and no false binaries here. I heard your vote is not a Valentine. Like your vote is not a love letter for like who you're professing your love for. Your vote is like choosing. It's a chess move, and it's almost like choosing your opponent. Like none of these guys are your friend.
I mean, that's how
It's like-
that's how we got on Biden the first
Right.
time. I was a Bernie Sanders supporter
Right.
for both times.
Yep.
And when Bernie Sanders got out of the primaries, my friend, I said the way that I was able to sell Joe Biden in our communities is by saying, this ain't about, I'm not going to dinner with this man.
Yeah.
We're not going to a concert together. Who's my opponent? Who can I, as a activist and an organizer and as a community, who can I actually fight to move to the places that I want to? And that's how my framing for Joe Biden was choosing him as my opponent. But here's the difference this time.
Break it down.
Because that worked in 2020.
Yeah.
When you say to people, and I've been organizing in Michigan for 12 years, right? Even though I'm from New York City, because it's a very large, highly concentrated Arab and Muslim American community.
I've heard of Dearborn. I've heard of it.
Dearborn is one of the best cities in America.
I've heard of it.
And you know, you tell people, you know, you try to have this conversation in Michigan. This is what people will ask you, and it's a good question. They say to you, so you want to tell me that Donald Trump is worse, because that's what people will say.
Yeah.
And this is what the people will respond. What is worse than a genocide?
I know.
And it's not, I don't have the answer to that question. And people will say, yeah, you can tell me that Donald Trump, if he were president, maybe this would have even been worse than it was. Maybe it'll get worse.
Trump said it wouldn't have happened.
Well, whether or not, either way,
it's a reliable source.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's still hypothetical.
Yeah.
But people are watching in real time.
Yeah.
Made in the USA bombs, 2 weapons deals, where Joe Biden literally went around Congress. He broke some rules to go around Congress to sell weapons deals to Israel during a genocide. So the people in Michigan and other Arab Americans, and even some of our allies, are like, bro, what's worse than a genocide? And it's a hard question to answer.
It's brutal. It's a brutal question. I mean, we're in California. So we can vote for whoever the fuck we want.
I'm from New York, same.
So I know Sammy's a big Robert Kennedy supporter.
Lord have mercy. No Robert Kennedy people.
No. I'm, you know, as somebody who grew up in the Free Palestine movement my whole life, been anti two-party system. I'm against the Democrats. I'm against the Republicans. That's just my personal take, and you know, as messed up and horrible as everything that's going on, I think America is finally seeing the two-facedness of the Democratic Party that we have seen for many years.
That's
Yet
right.
People weren't able to see it, and now people are actually seeing the bullshit. So my thing is, when it comes to voting, I quote, you know, one of the greatest senators of all time, Ted Cruz.
Lord have mercy.
Vote your conscience.
Lord have mercy, Sammy. Lord have mercy.
Hey, we got a reliable, quoting Trump, quoting Cruz,
Lord
possibly
help us.
RFK Jr.
God
Friday
help
Night
us all.
Semites. Yeah,
Okay,
God
not
help
the
us
man,
all.
but the message.
Yeah,
Vote your
yeah.
conscience.
Yeah,
okay?
yeah.
Vote your conscience.
Yeah. No, it's,
And vote local. That's
it's
really
real.
what it is.
I love
It's
that.
real.
I love that.
Local, my
I mean,
friends.
we're from the Bay. We're in Oakland, the home of Barbara Lee, the only one who voted against the war in Afghanistan, the war in Iraq, and from the very beginning after 9/11. She's retiring. Latifah Simon is stepping up. She's dope.
Yay, Latifah.
And so, like, we have good folks who we can support, but damn, it's hard.
Oh, it's hard.
Damn, it's hard. It's brutal. And I hope that what you're saying is right. Is just like we need to break away from the two-party, like the left. We're not supposed to have binaries, false binaries. But then it's like this is our choices. Like we gotta break the binary. Gotta get out of that. We gotta be a little more politically polyamorous, should I say? And just have more
It's just like
options.
we're stuck in this specific binary. You see, the two-party system, you see why it thrives. Because that's how it works. People have these kind of general beliefs. They gotta you gotta band together to beat one other bigger,
That's right.
similar sized beast. And so that's why the two-party system functionally survives. But it's got to be shaken up every now and then. It's got to reform.
Absolutely.
And you see that right now. You see changes within the Democratic Party. You see changes within the Republican Party. But like both of these parties have just been around so long, and they're both associated with such horrible shit.
Yeah.
It's just like rebrand, new party, give me a new party.
There's also voting laws that are basically stopping us from building like
That's right.
super
Yeah.
grassroots power. Like
That's
they
right.
close voting sites in poor Black, brown communities across the
Georgia,
country. In
right,
Georgia,
all over.
they are literally, formally incarcerated. People are still fighting for the right to formally incarcerated to get their, right to vote back. And even when they do, there's almost poll tax. Like they're taking us back. There are ID laws, right? When you know this, in places where you have to renew your ID, it could be $100, $120. People don't have this kind of money. So there's so much barriers to getting people to go to the polls. And there's laws there's states that are trying to pass laws like when you become 18, like automatic voter registration for young people. They don't want those things because they know what happens when more young people participate in democracy. Like things are going to transform. Things are going to move around.
That's right.
But I agree with you, Sammy. But the issue here is that we need people to take that theory, which a lot of people share, and put it into action.
Yeah.
You want third, fourth, fifth parties, you got to work for them. You got to get them registered in states across the country. You got to literally, you got to get signatures to register new parties, right? You got to do the work, and that's what I keep telling people.
You got to be active.
Active.
Yeah. Like y'all got the Working Families Party in New York that's at least a little,
Yeah,
you know, doing
they're
some
they're moving a
things.
little bit in some states. Wisconsin, they move in
Yeah.
New Jersey, Working Families Party, and
Yeah.
everything. It's like it's something,
I
right?
think they're trying to do. I think there might be a Working Families Party. They're trying to start up in Cali, but it's
Yep.
little by little.
I mean, that's an attempt that is semi-successful.
Yeah.
But what if there was like a real grassroots swell? Because
Yeah.
they also somehow have to work within the system too, because
Yeah.
they're often obviously supporting Democratic candidates, right? In New York, for example, on local levels, they could support somebody who's just a Working Families Party, like Letitia James, who's the Attorney General of the state of New York. She
Okay.
started out as a Working Families Party candidate for city council and won on that party line. So we know it's possible.
Yeah.
You just gotta, it's all about scale.
Word. So the message I'm getting is we gotta use every tool in the toolbox we got for us to get free and for Palestine and Israel to become the place that we need it to be,
That's
which
right.
is a place of freedom and justice and peace. And I just want to say thank you for coming on.
Thank you. We're all we got is what I want people to take from this.
And we appreciate you. It's an honor to have you. I have a freedom fighter and an organizer and a Brooklyn. I
had to represent my people in New York or nowhere, my
I see it.
friends.
I see it.
That's genocidal, but listen, we'll talk about that another time.
For the next show,
Yeah.
But Brooklyn's represented here.
There
for
we
sure.
go. BK. Shout out to the planet. We always like to end with a little toast, and so. For peace, for freedom, for justice, and
Thank you.
may we all still fucking be here in November.
From
Well,
ocean to ocean. All
From
right?
ocean to ocean. And
right.
for the Haram police, this is a T. Just
Yeah,
make
this
sure.
is tea.
they're
Yeah.
pleased.
This ain't no shot. Yeah.
Yeah. So, l'chaim. Happy
Sahten.
Friday night. Friday night
Sahten.
Semites.
Sahten.
There it is.
All right.